Welcome to my channel. Today's story is about a wife's revenge after being sent to prison by her own husband. But before you watch, please write where you're watching me from, what time it is where you are. I'm really curious. Enjoy the video.
I've been sitting in this room for 8 hours now. The fluorescent light above the ceiling hums and flickers every 43 seconds. I know because there's nothing else to look at. The agent across from me, Special Agent Rodriguez from the FBI, is the fifth one today. He stopped asking questions. He just stares at me with tired eyes and waits. On the table between us lies a leather-bound folder stamped with the Department of Justice seal. Inside are 2 years of my life, 38 pages of federal evidence, and a photocopy of a Texas driver's license with someone else's name, but my photo. I stare at that document and don't recognize myself, not because I look different, but because the woman in that picture believed in love, and I no longer do. Well, Chloe, Rodriguez opens the folder, pulls out the first page. One more time. In the matter of wire fraud, identity theft, and federal document forgery, Derek's lawyers insist you weren't a victim, you were a co-conspirator, that you helped him find other victims, that you took a cut of the laundered money. What's your response? I stay silent, because if I start talking, I won't be able to stop. And if I tell him the truth, he won't believe me. Derek's lawyers have already done their damage, turned everything inside out, made me the criminal and him the poor victim of a vengeful accountant. But this is my life, and it wasn't cheap. It was very expensive, literally. But let me start at the beginning. It all began very differently. 2.5 years before Agent Rodriguez placed that folder in front of me, I was just Chloe Elizabeth Bennett, 32 years old, senior staff accountant in a mid-sized construction firm in Austin, Texas, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment near the airport, drank instant coffee every morning from a cracked mug that said, "World's Best Aunt." My nephew gave it to me when he was 6. The crack appeared a year later. I never threw it away. It felt like the only thing that made me someone, not just an accountant, not just a number on a spreadsheet, but someone's best aunt. My morning started at 6:45 a.m. The alarm on my phone had been set for 6:45 for 5 years. I never changed it because I was used to it. First, the sound, that annoying, buzzing default ringtone. Then I'd reach for the nightstand by touch, turn it off, lie there for another 7 minutes with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The ceiling was uneven, with a crack running from the corner to the light fixture. I knew every crack, every stain. Then I'd get up, go to the bathroom, brush my teeth with mint toothpaste that didn't taste like mint anymore, just cold. Then coffee. 2 scoops, level. Water from the kettle that clicked when it boiled. The coffee was cheap, came in a red canister from H-E-B. It was bitter. I was used to it. I dressed without looking. Jeans, a sweater if it was cold, a blouse if it wasn't, hair in a ponytail because it was easier, makeup, mascara, and brows. 5 minutes. I didn't look in the mirror. Not because I was afraid of myself. I just didn't care anymore. At 32, I'd stopped expecting my life to change. Not out of despair, out of exhaustion. My parents died when I was 25. My mother from cancer, my father from a heart attack 6 months later. Couldn't live without her. I was left with the apartment, old with my father's tools in the storage closet and my mother's recipes in the kitchen drawer. I had a job that didn't bring me joy, but paid the bills. I had a nephew I saw once a month because my sister lived in Dallas and didn't really need me around. I wasn't needed by anyone, and I'd made peace with that. Work started at 9. The office was a gray 5-story building on the edge of town, smelling of cheap air freshener and stale coffee. My desk was in the corner of an open plan space. Computer, 2 monitors, a stack of papers on the left, my mug on the right. Colleagues said hello, nodded, sometimes threw out a "how are you?" without waiting for an answer. They called me Chloe, sometimes Chloe when they needed something urgent. I handled accounts, checked invoices, prepared reports. Numbers didn't lie to me. Numbers were truth. People weren't. And so it went, day after day, month after month. I barely noticed time passing. The only thing that changed was the number of papers on my desk and the figures in the reports. And that's how it was until the day Derek showed up. Marketing, new hire, good looking, with a smile that I thought was for everyone, but turned out to be just for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was a Tuesday, early October. A light rain was falling, the kind where you can't tell if it's fog or the clouds have come to earth. I was hunched over a quarterly report, reconciling numbers that wouldn't line up, feeling a dull headache forming at the base of my skull. I was rubbing my temples, drinking lukewarm coffee, cursing myself for not checking the invoices on Friday. And then the door opened. He didn't walk in like a nervous new employee, hesitant, clutching a piece of paper, looking around. He walked in like someone who already knew he was welcome. "Good morning," he said loudly to the whole office. "I'm Derek, your new marketing manager. Sorry I'm late. GPS took me to the wrong building." My colleagues smiled. Someone said, "No problem." Someone else said, "Welcome aboard." I looked up and saw him. Tall, light brown hair, blue eyes, navy blazer, white shirt. He was smiling as if he'd known us all for years. And then his gaze landed on me. He smiled wider, nodded, and said, "And you must be Chloe. I've heard about you. They said you're the most reliable person here." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and buried my face back in my report. But something inside me fluttered, like someone had touched a string that hadn't vibrated in a long time. I pushed the feeling away, told myself, "Chloe, you're 32, you're an accountant, you wear a ponytail and drink bitter instant coffee from a cracked mug. Guys like Derek don't look at girls like you." And I was right, but only half right. The first few weeks, he was the perfect colleague. Said hi to everyone, helped with reports, brought cookies to go with coffee. He came to my desk often to check the budget, to ask about last month's numbers, or just to say, "How are things, Chloe?" I answered briefly, professionally, but I noticed that he looked at me a beat too long, and that his smile when he spoke to me was different, softer, warmer. I chalked it up to politeness, good manners, just the way he was. But then small things started happening. One morning, he walked up to my desk and placed a paper cup in front of me. "This is for you," he said. "You always drink instant, I noticed. Here's real coffee with foam." I looked at the cup. My name was written on it. Not Chloe, Chloe, in marker, neat handwriting. "Why?" I asked. "Because you deserve good coffee," he said, and walked away. I sat there staring at that cup for 5 minutes. Then I opened the lid, inhaled the smell, real, with milk and a hint of cinnamon. I took a sip. It was perfect. I'd almost forgotten what good coffee tasted like. Not bitterness, not cheap acidity, but something real. That flutter came back. I pushed it away again, but I didn't throw the cup away. I set it next to my mug, a reminder that someone had noticed me. A week later, he brought me a cake, not a big one, small, in a box. "Just because," he said, "because it's Wednesday." I laughed, for the first time in a long time, not politely, not restrained, genuinely. Derek looked at me and said, "You have a beautiful laugh. You should do it more often." I blushed. Me, a 32-year-old accountant, blushing like a schoolgirl. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just politeness anymore. This was something else, something I'd been afraid of and had stopped dreaming about. But what I heard next would... We started dating a month later. He took me to a real restaurant. White tablecloths, candles. I wore the only dress that had been hanging in my closet for 3 years and put on makeup like I hadn't done since my best friend's wedding. When I stepped outside, Derek was standing by the entrance with a bouquet of roses. Red, 12 of them. "You're beautiful, Chloe," he said, handing me the flowers. I knew it. Knew what? I asked. That you were like this, that underneath the ponytail and cheap coffee was a woman I'd move mountains for. I blushed again. We got into his car, new, black, smelling of leather and expensive cologne. I felt like an imposter, like I'd stepped into someone else's life, like none of this was really happening to me. But Derek held my hand, and his palm was warm and confident, and it felt like if he believed in me, maybe I should start believing in myself too. Dinner was long. We talked about everything: work, childhood, why I was alone, why he was alone. He told me he'd been divorced for 2 years, that his ex-wife lived in another city, that there were no kids, that he wanted a fresh start and had moved here. I told him about my parents, about my nephew, about being afraid of ending up alone forever. He squeezed my hand and said, "You won't end up alone. You have me now." The word "me" sounded so natural, so right. I felt tears welling up, not from sadness, from relief, like I'd been waiting my whole life for someone to say, "You have me now." That night, he didn't go home. Derek stayed, and when I woke up in the morning, he was already at the stove frying eggs. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, kissing my forehead. "Coffee?" I looked at him, in my kitchen, in my old apartment, holding my cracked mug, and couldn't believe my luck. I didn't know then that this luck wasn't a gift, it was a trap, and it would snap shut 6 months later. But I didn't see the signs. I didn't want to see them. The first 3 months were perfect. Derek moved in after 2 weeks. Why rent a place when you have a home? He said it so sweetly, so caringly, that I didn't think to argue. He changed the light bulbs in the hallway, no more flickering, fixed the kitchen faucet that had dripped for years, bought a new espresso machine, a real one, with a steam wand that made foam like in a coffee shop. I woke up every morning to the smell of fresh coffee and smiled. I smiled even when I brushed my teeth, even on the highway, even at work. Colleagues noticed. "Chloe, you're glowing." I didn't hide it. I talked about Derek, about his thoughtfulness, about how amazing he was. No one warned me. No one said, "Chloe, take a closer look." And if they did, I didn't hear them. Then he started talking about money. Not directly, not roughly, but carefully, like he was looking out for me. "Chloe," he said one evening when we were on the couch watching a movie, "what if I helped you with your finances? You're an accountant, you know numbers, but you don't know how to grow them." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, you have savings, they're just sitting there. I know how to invest. I have a guy, he's brilliant. We could double or triple your money in a year." I hesitated. I had about $40,000 saved. I'd been putting money aside for years, since my parents died. I didn't know what to do with it. It sat in a savings account earning pathetic interest. "I'll think about it," I said. "Of course, think about it," he said, kissing my cheek. "I'm not pushing. I just want us to have a future together. A bigger place, a better car, a real vacation. Don't you want that?" I did. I wanted it so badly. I was so tired of my one bedroom, of the crack in the ceiling, of cheap coffee. I wanted a real life with him. I agreed a week later. I wired $40,000 to an account he named. "A trusted partner," Derek assured me. "Honest, I trust him like a brother." I didn't check. I trusted. A month later, he came to me with shining eyes. "Chloe, your money already made a profit. $7,000 in 1 month. Can you believe it?" I couldn't, but I was happy. I hugged him, kissed him, told him he was a genius. He laughed and said, "This is just the beginning. If we add more, we could buy a house in 6 months. I don't have more, just this apartment, but it's mine." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Then let's sell it. Prices are good right now. We invest the money, and in a year we buy something twice as big. Just imagine, a new place, a new neighborhood, renovated, our home, ours." Something pricked inside me. The apartment was the only thing I had left of my parents, the walls that remembered my mother's hands, the floor where my father taught me to roller skate when I was little. Yes, right inside the apartment, in the winter, wearing skates over thick socks. I couldn't sell it. I said no. Derek didn't push. He said, "Of course, sweetheart, whatever you say," and we didn't bring it up again. But I noticed that after that conversation, he grew a little colder, a little more distant. He didn't kiss me as often, didn't say, "I love you" as much. I blamed it on stress. He had a big project at work. But I was wrong. He wasn't stressed. He was planning. 2 months after the apartment conversation, I came home from work early. I'd finished up ahead of schedule and decided to surprise him, make dinner. I unlocked the door, took off my coat, walked into the kitchen. Derek was sitting at the table. Papers were spread out in front of him. When he saw me, he swept them into a folder. "Hey," he said with a tight smile, "you're early." "What was that?" I asked, nodding at the folder. "Work stuff, nothing interesting." He stood up, came over, hugged me, kissed my forehead. I tried to glance at the folder. He pulled back. "Don't, Chloe. It's confidential. I signed an NDA." I nodded, but inside, a worm of anxiety took root, a small doubt wriggling in the depths. I pushed it away, told myself, "You're being paranoid. He loves you. He takes care of you. Trust him." I made dinner. We ate in silence. He was tense. So was I. We went to bed early. He turned his back to me. I lay there staring at the ceiling. The hallway light no longer flickered. Derek had fixed it. But somehow I missed that flicker. It had been mine. The new light felt foreign. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Derek talking on the balcony. His voice was low but tense. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard the tone. Angry, sharp, unfamiliar. He never spoke like that around me. When he came back inside, I asked, "Who was that?" "Work," he said, starting to dress. "I have to leave for a couple of days. Business trip." "You didn't mention a business trip." "It's urgent." He kissed my cheek, dry, quick, and left. The door clicked shut. I was alone in an apartment that suddenly felt like someone else's. I walked to the kitchen, started the espresso machine. As it hummed, I looked at the table. Where the folder had been, a small scrap of paper remained, a corner he'd missed. I picked it up. It was a fragment of a wire transfer receipt. The amount, $10,000. The recipient, Lone Star Holdings, LLC. But the sender's name was familiar, Derek Vance. I didn't know he transferred $10,000 to anyone. I put the scrap back, but I memorized every digit because it was the first small thing that broke my trust, though I didn't understand that yet. The 2 days he was gone passed like a fog. I went to work, did my reports, drank my coffee, but my thoughts kept returning to the receipt, the folder, the phone call. I tried to convince myself it meant nothing, that everyone had expenses, that business trips could be urgent, that I was just being paranoid. But at night, lying alone in a bed that smelled of his cologne, I couldn't sleep. I'd get up, go to the kitchen, pour a glass of water, stare out the window. The streetlights glowed outside. Occasional cars drove by. I thought, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me? And then I'd think, what if I'm right? And that thought made me cold. Not in the apartment, inside. He came back Sunday evening with flowers, with a smile, with a bottle of expensive wine sticking out of his bag. "Miss me?" he asked, hugging me. "Yes," I said. And it was true. I wanted so badly for my fears to be nothing. I wanted so badly to believe. We drank wine, watched a movie, made love. He was tender, caring, perfect. I almost forgot about the receipt. Almost. But when he fell asleep, I got up quietly, took his jacket off the chair, and reached into the inside pocket. His wallet was there. I opened it. Inside were bills, cards, his driver's license, and a photo of me. I exhaled with relief. But then I noticed a second photo tucked behind the license. A woman, blonde, pretty, with writing on the back. "Miss you, Derek. Love, Victoria." Victoria? I didn't know any Victoria. He'd never mentioned a Victoria. My hands started shaking. I put everything back, hung up the jacket, lay down in bed, and stared at the ceiling until morning. He slept beside me, breathing evenly. I looked at his face, calm, handsome, familiar, and didn't recognize him, because the man lying next to me wasn't who I thought he was. In the morning, I asked directly, "Who is Victoria?" He froze for a second, then smiled. "Victoria? She's my cousin. We haven't seen each other in a while. She lives in Houston. Why?" "I found a photo in your wallet." He laughed. "You went through my things, Chloe? That's not cool." "You never mentioned a cousin." "How much do you really know about me? We've only been together a few months. I don't have to tell you about every single relative." He spoke calmly, almost cheerfully, but I saw his shoulders tense, his jaw tighten, his eyes go cold for a fraction of a second, then warm again. "I'm sorry," I said. "I got scared." "Silly girl," he kissed me. "You're the only one. Remember that." I remembered that I didn't believe him, and from that day on, I started noticing things. He often took his phone into the bathroom. He checked messages when he thought I was asleep. Once I saw him quickly close a chat when I came up behind him. He said his ex-wife lived in another city, but I found a search in his browser history, "How to hide assets in a divorce." He said he had no kids, but once I heard him say on the phone, "Tell Sophie that Daddy loves her." He noticed me immediately, ended the call, and said, "Just a coworker joking around." Small things, details you could ignore. You could tell yourself, he's just social, his work is complicated, I'm too jealous. But my body didn't lie. Every time he lied, my head would start to ache. Not right away, an hour or two later, a dull, throbbing pain at my temples. I didn't connect it to his lies, but my subconscious already knew. It was waiting for me to catch up. The catching up happened a month later. I came home from work early, again. Derek wasn't expecting me. He thought I'd be back at 6, but I arrived at 4. The door was unlocked. I walked in and heard voices, his and someone else's, a woman's. I stopped in the hallway, still wearing my coat. The voices came from the kitchen. "She won't find out," the woman was saying. "You're stressing over nothing." "She's an accountant," Derek replied. "She'd notice any mistake, so it has to be clean." "Then do it. You have access, don't you?" "Almost. I need her signature. Can't do it without that." "Forge it." "Risky, but yeah, I probably will. And one more thing. She needs a new ID. Different photo, but her data, so I can open offshore accounts." "Why?" "Because I want to move the money somewhere no one will find it, and for that, Chloe needs to become someone else, at least on paper." I stood frozen. My heart pounded somewhere in my throat. My fingers, clutching my keys, turned white. I took a step. The floor creaked. The kitchen went silent. A second later, the woman walked out, blonde, from the photo, Victoria, the cousin. "Oh, Chloe, hey," she said with a smile. "We weren't expecting you. I was just passing through. Stopped for coffee." "I heard," I said quietly. "Heard what?" Derek came out behind her, pale but composed. "Everything. The signature, the access, the fake ID, the fact that I wasn't supposed to find out." Silence. The kind of silence where you can hear someone's life falling apart. Derek looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at Derek. Then he stepped toward me. "Chloe, you misunderstood. We were talking about work." "Don't lie," I said. My voice didn't shake. I surprised myself. "I heard every word. You want my signature? You want to make me a fake ID? You want to move money offshore? Why?" He didn't answer. Neither did Victoria. They exchanged a glance, and in that glance I read everything. I read that they weren't just acquaintances. I read that the plan had existed for a long time. I read that my apartment, my savings, my life, they were just resources. I turned and walked out. Didn't slam the door, just closed it behind me. Went down the stairs, stepped outside, sat on the bench by the entrance and stared at my hands. They were shaking. I clenched them into fists. My nails dug into my palms until it hurt, but the pain was better than what was happening inside me. I sat there for an hour, maybe 2. A light rain was falling, cold October rain. I was soaked, but I didn't feel the cold. Inside there was fire, not anger, resolve. I pulled out my phone and called Rachel. We hadn't spoken in 6 months. After I started seeing Derek, I'd pulled away from everyone. He'd said, "Why do you need friends when you have me?" I'd believed him. Idiot. "Rachel," I said when she picked up, "can I crash at your place? I'm in trouble." "Chloe? What happened?" "I'll tell you when I get there. I'll be there in an hour." I hung up, stood up, and walked toward my car. The rain hit my face. I didn't care. I was thinking about only one thing. I had to find out the truth, all of it. Because if I backed down now, if I got scared, if I believed his promises and his tears, I would lose myself forever. Rachel lived in a new development on the north side of town. We hadn't seen each other since summer, but she opened the door like we'd parted yesterday. She made tea, brought out cookies, wrapped me in a blanket. "Talk," she said, sitting across from me. I told her everything. Derek, the money, the photo, the signature, the fake ID, Victoria, the conversation in the kitchen. "Chloe," she said when I finished, "you know what this is, right? It's a classic con. They meet women, gain their trust, extract money, and disappear." "We're not married," I said. "We just live together." "Even easier. He doesn't have to split anything. He'll just take and leave with your money. And if he's already talking about a fake ID, he's setting you up to be the fall guy. If something goes wrong, the trail leads to you." I covered my face with my hands. How blind I'd been. How I'd missed the obvious. All those investments, profits, our future, they were just tools. He didn't want a future with me. He wanted my past, my savings, my apartment, my signature, my name on fake documents. "What do I do?" I asked. "First, don't go back to him. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow we see a lawyer. I know someone who handles this kind of thing." I nodded. We finished our tea. Rachel went to her bedroom and I stayed on the couch. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling. It was smooth here, no cracks, but I missed my cracks, my apartment, my life, the one I'd destroyed by letting a stranger in. The next morning, we went to see a lawyer. His name was David O'Leary. He was in his 50s, wore thin-rimmed glasses, and spoke quietly but with weight. His office was small, crammed with files, smelling of old paper and coffee. He listened to me, asked a few questions, jotted notes in a pad. "Chloe," he said, setting down his pen, "I have to warn you, this is complicated. You transferred the money voluntarily. Proving fraud will be hard, but not impossible, especially if we find other victims. And the fact that he planned to forge your ID is a federal crime. You can report him for that." "I will," I said, "today." "Then let's go to the FBI field office. But be prepared, they might not believe you. They might say, you should have known better. Stay strong." I was ready. No, I wasn't ready, but I knew I had no other choice. At the FBI office, we were met without enthusiasm. The intake agent, a heavy-set man with a mustache, listened, nodded, scribbled in a log. "File a report. But ma'am, you understand these are civil matters. He didn't steal your money at gunpoint. You sent it willingly." "He deceived me," I said. "Promised profits. Lied." Do you have a contract, a promissory note, anything in writing? I shook my head. Then it's your word against his. File the report. We'll look into it. I filed. 3 pages typed up in neat prose. When I clicked submit, my hands were shaking. But I did it, and I left with the feeling that I'd taken a first step. Small, almost useless, but a step. Back at Rachel's, I called Derek. He didn't pick up. I texted, "We need to talk. I know the truth, and I've been to the FBI." An hour later, he replied, "What truth? You're making things up. Come home and we'll discuss it." I didn't go. I was afraid he'd fool me again, that I'd believe him again, that his voice, his eyes, his "I love you" would break my resolve. I stayed at Rachel's, and that night, for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. Not because everything was solved, but because I'd stopped being afraid of the truth. I decided I would find it, no matter the cost. The finding started the next day. I was sitting at Rachel's kitchen table, drinking instant coffee from her mug, scrolling through my phone. A notification from my bank popped up. A transaction. I opened the app. Another $10,000 had been withdrawn from my account, transferred to Derek Vance. But I hadn't authorized it. I checked the transaction history. It was listed as a voluntary gift through mobile banking. Someone had logged into my app and sent the money. Someone who knew my password. I froze. The coffee in my mouth turned to bitter ash. I couldn't swallow. Cold sweat ran down my back, even though the room was warm. I read the transaction 5 times. The amount didn't change. $10,000. Mine, that I'd been saving for a new HVAC system, that I'd put aside for a rainy day. That day had come, and it was black. I called the bank. The customer service representative explained in a cheerful voice that the transfer was made through the mobile app from my device using my password. Technically, it was legal. I could dispute it, but that would require an FBI report and a forensic review. It would take months. My chances were 50-50. I hung up, sat down on the chair, and for the first time through all of this, I cried. Not quietly, not into a pillow, out loud. But the tears dried. After an hour, I stopped crying. Not because it felt better, because something inside me clicked, like a switch had flipped. I wiped my face, looked in the mirror, red eyes, swollen nose, puffy face, but my gaze was different, hard, cold. I didn't recognize myself, but I liked this new me. "Rachel," I said, "do you know anyone who can dig up information on a person? Off the books. I need his accounts, his connections, his past. I'm an accountant. I can work with numbers, but I need access to what I can't get legally." Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's someone. His name's Glenn. He works in IT security. He has access to databases, but it's expensive and not exactly legal." "I don't care. I want my money back, and I want to stop him." His name was Glenn, Rachel's former classmate, worked for a cybersecurity firm, but on the side did things that could land him in prison. He showed up that evening with a laptop, a thumb drive, and the look of someone who'd seen too much dirt to be surprised. "What do you need?" he asked, sitting at the table. "Derek Vance, born around 1985. Everything you can find. Account movements, connections, real estate, especially offshore accounts or shell companies." Glenn opened his laptop, connected to some network, started typing queries. I sat next to him, watching the screen. Rachel poured tea. The only sounds were the clicking of keys. "I've got something," Glenn said after 20 minutes. "You're not going to like it." "Tell me." "Derek Vance, born 1985, divorced, 1 child, a daughter, age 6, prior conviction for fraud, served probation, and there's more. He turned the screen toward me. A property record from the county assessor. 2 houses, one in Fort Worth, one here in Austin, both owned by Derek Vance, both bought last year, in cash. The Austin house, a 3-bedroom in a new development near the Domain, value around $700,000. That's impossible, I said. He doesn't have that kind of money. He's a marketing manager making maybe $80 a year. Then the money came from somewhere, and I think you know where. Now look at this. He opened another tab. Transaction records, not Derek's personal accounts, those were sealed, but movement through shell LLCs. 3 shelf companies registered to stolen identities. From those, money flowed to accounts in the Cayman Islands. From there to safety deposit boxes in Dubai. This is money laundering, a serious operation. Your 40 grand is just a piece. I've traced at least 200,000 in the last year alone, coming from who knows how many women. Women like you. I stared at the screen and did the math. 200,000. How many women had he conned? 4? 5? I clenched my fists. My nails dug into my palms again. I barely felt the pain. Can you find other victims? I asked. I can try, Glenn said, but it'll take time. I need to access some databases through contacts. It's risky. I have time, and I have money. Not much, but enough to pay you. Glenn left an hour later, promising to be in touch. I stared at the kitchen table with Rachel. We sat in silence. I stared out the window. Dusk was falling. Streetlights flickered on one by one. I thought about how, just a few months ago, I'd sat in this same kitchen as a different Chloe, naive, in love, happy. That Chloe was dead. Derek had killed her. But the new Chloe, the one sitting here now, was more dangerous because she had nothing left to lose. 4 days later, Glenn texted. He'd found them. 3 women over 2 years, 2 in Austin, 1 in San Antonio. Same story every time. Meeting, courtship, investment talk, wire transfers, then disappearance. Total losses, over $100,000. My $40,000 was just part of it. Names and contacts? I asked. Yeah, sending now, but be careful. Not all of them will want to talk. Some still love him. I got the list. 3 names, 3 phone numbers, 3 lives like mine. I called the first, Stephanie. She didn't pick up. I left a message. I called the second, Megan. Her husband answered, told me Megan was in the hospital, a nervous breakdown. I called the third, Nicole. She answered herself. Hello? Nicole? My name is Chloe. I was also conned by Derek Vance. Silence. Then a quiet voice. How much did he take from you? 40,000, and another 10 without my permission. He took 80 from me, she said. I sold my car. He said we'd buy a house together. I believed him. Stupid. We're not stupid. We're people who wanted to love and be loved. He used that. But now we can fight back. How? Together, file a joint complaint, gather evidence, find others. The more of us, the better our chance. Nicole was quiet. I could hear her breathing, ragged, nervous. Then she said, Okay, I'm in. We met the next day at a coffee shop. Nicole was around 40 with tired eyes and shaking hands. She drank green tea and spoke softly as if Derek might hear. Stephanie showed up an hour later, tall, thin, red-eyed. She'd just learned that Derek had drained her savings account, $15,000. Megan didn't come. She was still in the hospital, but her husband promised to send her documents. The 3 of us sat there, 3 women bound by one man's betrayal. We compared stories, dates, amounts. The pattern was identical. Meeting, perfect first months, investment talk, wire transfers, then pressure to sell the house or car. If the victim refused, pressure, tears, threats to leave. If she agreed, the money disappeared along with Derek for a few weeks. Then he'd come back with a new story. The investment tanked, but I'll make it right. Just give me a little more. And the women gave, because they'd already lost too much to stop. We need a lawyer, I said. Not just one, a team, and we need evidence. Glenn found accounts in the Caymans and Dubai. If we can prove the money went there, it's not just fraud, it's laundering on a massive scale. I have text messages, Stephanie said. He wrote me every day. Love you, miss you, you're my life. Then when I refused to sell my house, he started threatening me, said he'd tell my work I was sleeping around. I have recordings, Nicole said. I started taping calls when I got suspicious. He demanded I transfer my condo to him, said he'd leave me for someone else if I didn't. I started crying. He said, "Stop whining, you're not the only one." I gripped my mug so hard my knuckles went white. This man had slept in my bed, kissed me, called me beautiful, and done the same to others? Demanded, threatened, humiliated. I felt bile rise to my throat, hot, metallic. I took a sip of water to swallow it down. "I'll find a lawyer," I said, "and I'll find a way to stop him for good." We parted at 9 that night. I went back to Rachel's, lay down on the couch, and didn't sleep. I ran the plan through my head. File a police report. Done. Find other victims. Done. Gather evidence. In progress. But it wasn't enough. He'd slip away like he had before. I needed something else. Something that would hit him where it hurt most. His money, his houses, his freedom. The idea came near dawn as the sky began to lighten outside. I sat up on the couch, grabbed my phone, and started searching. County tax records, property databases, court filings. If he owned houses bought with illegal money, he hadn't paid taxes on the income. If he hadn't paid taxes, that was a crime. I couldn't access his bank accounts, those were sealed, but I could access public records, property deeds, tax liens, judgments. I'm an accountant. I know how to work with numbers, and I started digging. A week later, I had a folder. Thick, dozens of pages. Property records from the county assessor, screenshots from the Texas Comptroller's public database, payment receipts that Glenn had found. I didn't ask how. Nicole's recordings, Stephanie's texts. I took the folder to David O'Leary, my lawyer. He flipped through it for an hour. Then he took off his glasses, looked at me, and said, "Chloe, this isn't just fraud. This is an organized criminal enterprise. That woman, Victoria, she's not his cousin. She's his partner. She finds the victims. He works them. And Glenn, are you sure his information is legal?" "I don't care," I said. "The truth matters more. In court, it might not work. Illegally obtained evidence can be thrown out. Then we use only what's legal. The illegal stuff is just a map to tell us where to dig." David shook his head, but he nodded. "All right, we file. Criminal charges. We have a chance." We filed, together with Nicole and Stephanie. Megan was still in the hospital, but her husband signed an affidavit. 4 complaints, 4 stories, 4 women who'd been stripped of their money, their trust, their peace. Derek found out 3 days later. He called me that evening. I didn't pick up. He texted, "Chloe, this is a misunderstanding. Let's meet and talk like adults." I didn't answer. He called again and again. Then the threats started. "You'll regret this. I'll destroy you, your reputation, your job. You'll end up on the street." I listened to those messages, and inside me grew an icy calm. I wasn't afraid because I had the folder and because I knew he had no power over me anymore. A month after we filed, Derek was arrested. It happened in the morning at his new house, that 3-bedroom near the Domain. I heard from Agent Rodriguez, the same one who'd later sit across from me in this room, but back then he was still fresh, still energetic. "Chloe," he said, "we picked up your ex. We're executing a search warrant now, and we found 2 more victims." How many total? I asked. 8. Total losses around $250,000. 250,000. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. 8 lives. 8 women who'd believed, loved, hoped, and one monster who'd used them. I thought it would get easier after the arrest. It didn't, because the real nightmare began. Derek didn't give up. He hired a lawyer, expensive, aggressive, with a name that sounded like a verdict, and that lawyer started playing hardball. His defense was simple and ugly. All transfers were voluntary, all the women offered money freely, and Chloe, the lead witness, was acting out of revenge because Derek had dumped her. And more, she was in on it. We'd had a business together, he claimed, and when he tried to get out, she framed him. They're saying you weren't a victim, you were a co-conspirator, David told me at our next meeting, that you willingly sent money to accounts you knew were fraudulent, that you took a cut, and worst of all, they filed a motion to charge you with identity theft. They claim you ordered the fake ID yourself, and when Derek refused to go along with it, you turned on him. It's a lie. I never even saw that ID. I know, but they found the print shop that made it, and the owner gave a statement that a woman matching your description placed the order. Derek, of course, denies everything, says you set him up. I closed my eyes. There it was, the thing I'd feared most. He'd flipped the script, made me the criminal and himself the victim. And now the agents looked at me differently, not as a victim, as a possible accomplice. What do I do? I asked. Prove your innocence. We have texts, recordings, testimony from other women, and we have Glenn. If he can find proof that Derek ordered the ID, we win. Glenn searched for 2 weeks, and he found it. Not the ID itself, that was probably destroyed, but he found the order at the print shop. The order was placed by a man, paid in cash, but the print shop had security footage. Glenn got it, don't ask how. The footage showed Derek walking into the shop, ordering the ID, discussing the details with the manager, showing a photo, my photo, but a different one he'd taken when we first started dating. I watched that footage and couldn't believe my eyes. There he was, calm, confident, discussing my fake identity like he was buying groceries. I brought the footage to Agent Rodriguez. He watched it 3 times. Then he said, "Where did this come from?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is that it proves Derek ordered the ID, not me." Rodriguez sighed, but he took the footage. The print shop owner was questioned again, and he admitted he'd been asked to lie by Derek's lawyer. The case took a new turn. The lawyer was disqualified. Derek got an additional charge, witness tampering. But the trial still wasn't fast. 14 long months of depositions, forensic audits, endless hearings. I went to the courthouse like it was my job, every week, sometimes every day. I saw Derek in the glass cage, saw his new lawyers, saw him smile when another motion was granted. He thought he'd get out. He always had before, but not this time. One by one, the women he'd conned took the stand. Stephanie, Nicole, Megan. She'd been released from the hospital, came to court, sat in the gallery, and stared at him with such hatred that I felt a chill. His ex-wife testified, told the court how he'd hit her, threatened her, drained her accounts. 4 more women we'd found through Glenn, 12 in total, 12 lives he'd broken. The investigation and pretrial hearings dragged on for 14 months. 14 months I lived in limbo, neither victim nor defendant, just a person waiting for a verdict. I changed jobs because people at my old office looked at me sideways. Some believed Derek's lawyers, others were just afraid to be associated with me. I sold my apartment, the one with the cracked ceiling, not because I needed the money, because I couldn't live there anymore. Every wall reminded me of him. Every crack reminded me of my blindness. I bought a small studio in a different neighborhood with a smooth ceiling and a new light fixture that didn't flicker. And now I've been sitting in this room for 8 hours. Agent Rodriguez stares at me with tired eyes and waits for my answer. "Chloe," he says again, "I'll ask one more time. Derek's lawyers insist you were the mastermind, that you ordered the fake ID, that you took a cut of the laundered money, that you're extorting him because he wanted out of your criminal partnership. What do you say to that?" I look at the folder on the table, at the 38 pages, at the photocopy of the Texas driver's license, my face, a stranger's name, and I smile, not happily, not triumphantly, just tiredly. "I say let them prove it, Agent," I say. "Let them produce a document with my signature ordering that ID. Let them show a single bank statement with a deposit to my account from Derek's scheme. Let them find one witness who ever saw me with Derek discussing these crimes. They have nothing, because I'm not a criminal. I'm a woman who was deceived, and I won't let them turn me into something I'm not." Agent Rodriguez looks at me for a long moment. Then he closes the folder. "All right, Chloe, your statement is recorded. Trial's in 2 weeks. Don't leave town." I nod, stand up, walk out of the room. The hallway is long, smells of bleach and cheap coffee from a vending machine. I walk to the exit. Outside, the sun is shining. October sun, cold but bright. I squint, sit on a bench outside the Federal Building, pull out my phone. No messages, no calls, no one waiting for me at home, no one to ask how my day went. I'm alone. But for the first time in a long time, that doesn't scare me, because alone means free. Free from lies, from betrayal, from the hope that was a trap. 2 weeks later, the verdict came down. Derek Vance was found guilty on all counts: wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, witness tampering. 9 years in federal prison. Victoria got 4 years probation. She'd turned state's evidence against him in exchange for a lighter sentence. The print shop owner paid a fine. The intermediaries got prison time. I was officially named a victim. The Bureau formally cleared me of any involvement as a co-conspirator. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was in my eyes. I walked down the street without looking back. I was 34. I had no money. Most of it was never recovered. The Cayman accounts were frozen, but the repatriation process would take years. I had no husband, no apartment where I grew up, no belief in love. But I had me, the new me, the one who knows that betrayal doesn't kill you, it forges you. The one who will never again let a man control her life. The one who drinks coffee from a new mug. No cracks, but the same bitter taste. And that taste no longer scares me. It's familiar, it's honest, it's mine. That evening, I sit in my new studio apartment, drinking coffee, staring out the window. The light doesn't flicker. I bought a good one, expensive, with steady illumination. Outside, the street lights come on. I think about how many Dereks are still out there, how many women will cry into their pillows tonight, how many will lose their money, their trust, themselves. I can't save them all, but I can save one, myself, and that's already a victory. My nephew calls on FaceTime, shows me a new drawing, a rocket ship landing on an unknown planet. "Aunt Chloe, will you come for Christmas?" "I'll come," I say. "I promise." I smile, and in that smile, there's no bitterness, only warmth, small, fragile, but alive, like that crack in my old mug, the one I threw away, but that will always stay with me, a reminder that I survived, and that cracks don't make us worse, they make us real. The keys to my new locks sat on the nightstand, surprisingly light. I picked them up, squeezed them in my palm. The metal warmed against my skin. 8 months ago, the old keys to my old apartment had felt like shackles. Now I understood. Locks aren't prisons. Prisons are the people you let into your life, and keys are choices. I'd finally learned how to use them.